Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko. I am a former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur, the founder of Laborless, which is an immigration tech startup that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which is a marketing agency for the immigration mobility space, and also, of course, brings you this show. I'm super excited. We took a little bit of a break from the show with travel and just, things got busy. And so I'm really, really happy to be back. And today's a very special episode. Our guest today is the CEO and founder of Benivo, Nitzan Yudan, and he's based in London. So by the way, it's pretty late for them today. So I'm really appreciative that he's joined us. Benivo is a global mobility management solution. It is, in my view, where the industry is going, which I'm really excited to talk about, because there's a lot of desire, I think, in the global mobility space to have a platform that really kind of brings a lot of information that mobility professionals need into one place. Benivo has been growing a lot lately. They have an amazing YouTube and LinkedIn show and a lot of great content. So I'm happy to be the one interviewing Benivo for once, since the team has interviewed a lot of other people on their show. Where I'm excited to get into Nitzan's story and learn all about his lessons as an early entrepreneur, and sort of how Benivo started and where how it got to where it is today. So without further ado, after that very long introduction, Nitzan, thank you so much for being here, and again, thank you for staying up late to chat with us. So appreciate you being here.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. Been following the show for a long time and excited to be on it.
Yeah, likewise. And one of the things that we're going to, of course, talk about is Benivo and the show and all the content that you guys create, which is, phenomenal. From my perspective, this is partly why I started the GMI Rocket Show. It's really just to create more share more information and create more content for the global mobility space, whether it's specifically immigration or broader mobility. So I love that you guys are sort of doing that. And I think, the world is digital now. People live on social media much more than they did before. And it's a good time for that. So I always, I feel the kinship, I guess, is what I'm saying. Before we jump into your story, for folks who are listening and watching and tuning in, please say hello, give yourself a shout out, give your company a shout out, leave a comment if you have any questions, or just saying hello to Nitzan or to me. And of course, as we were going along, if you like this conversation, please give a thumbs up or a heart or a clap or whatever. You can laugh now. You can have a laughing emoji on LinkedIn. So, it's great to have that interaction with you all. So Nitzan, I love talking to people, of course, before we get to Benivo and everything you've built, just kind of learning about you as a person and sort of your life journey as an entrepreneur, and eventually how you got to start the company. So you right now you're based in London, but we were just chatting a few minutes before we went live, and you were sharing that you were born in Israel and then you spent a little bit of time in the Netherlands, I guess, right? And then you moved back to Israel. Can you share a little bit about that? You almost had like an immigration story when you were just a kid. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what it was like, growing up in Israel and Amsterdam, doing some of those moves as a young person?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in London right now for quite a bit, but as you can hear, that's not my accent. I grew up. I was born in Israel. Then I went into the mobility industry at the age of 18 months. Right, where my parents went on an assignment to Amsterdam for 3 years, and we grew up there. I was speaking fluently Dutch. Unfortunately, I don't remember any of that. But then went back to Israel and spent my childhood there. So that's where I grew up. That's kind of my accent and education is coming from.
Did your parents was it for a work assignment that they sort of moved?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about sort of what that was? I guess you don't remember much, but I don't know if you ever have talked about it with them, kind of what it was like to move across the world with a small child and, I don't know, settle into a new country for a job.
Yeah, so for my parents, that was the third long assignment that they did. I was on my brother and sister went with them also to Ethiopia and Canada, and that's became kind of the family folklore about traveling the world and exploring new places and trying out living in new places. So I think we grew up in a very international oriented family.
Wow, that's so cool. When you moved back to Israel, how old were you when you moved back finally? About 4 or 5
About
years?
5, yeah,
Yeah.
5 years old. So
did you were you kind of like the kid with this crazy experience, and was it different at all for you as a kid, or was it kind of just standard? We moved back, and now I'm going back to school as a 5-year-old.
Yeah, it was. I was young. I do remember some challenging settling in. So when people talk about that, I do remember some of these challenges to fit in. But I think I did okay after. Got used to that. Got some new friends and felt at home.
Yeah, that's cool. Because we talk a lot about in the industry in general, sort of employee happiness when they go on assignment, and a lot of that isn't related to the job. It's really related to their family and how easy it is for a trailing spouse. If there are children, how easy it is for the children. There's so much involved around that. So it's always good to see that kind of the people who are making change in the industry have also experienced it, right? For what it's worth. So okay, you move back, you're 5 years old, you're kind of, I guess, settled in to Israel now. And eventually I know that you kind of went off to study computer science or engineering at university. But before that, as a young kid, were you sort of, did you get into computers just on your own, or like, how did it come about that you eventually became interested in engineering and computers?
Yeah, I think as a child, I was a combination of what I am today as well, as a geek and entrepreneur. I always played with computer. My older brother had one, and sometimes when he didn't look, I was playing with that, and then I had mine. I spent hours and hours assembling and disassembling that, and trying to hack it, and trying to find ways around the code. Very early on, I got connected to what was called the BBS then, which was the thing that how you connected with other people before the internet. And got to build my first website back in 1995. So I guess it shows a bit that I'm old, but from early age, I like to do that. And at the same time, I started a business, right? When I was 10 years old. Wow. I took a water slide, put it in our garden, and started to charge money for the kids from the neighborhood to come and slide, and cooked food for them, and was looking how to promote that in the neighborhood. So those things were definitely engraved in me.
Okay, so I have to ask you about both of those things. So in terms of but about the water slide, what made you think, like, did you grow up in the kind of environment where it was just thinking about business and entrepreneurship, or how does it dawn on you to say, I'm going to make this into a business and scale it, and then think about marketing? How do you do that as a 10-year-old?
I think it a lot has to do with my parents who gave me that freedom. My father had a corporate career till he was 50 years old, and then he was a very senior position, and one day he got fired, and he didn't have a job anymore. And he had to reinvent himself. And he ended up becoming an entrepreneur at the age of 50. And now 36 years ago, he just turned 86. He's still running a business and still working longer hours than the two of us together. Wow. And that kind of was the inspiration in the house. So it kind of, it made a bit of sense. And my parents really let me go with my ideas. Like when I came up with this idea that I'll have a slide in the garden, and I'll print out voucher coupons and give to all the neighbors, and they said, yeah, go ahead. They didn't think it's a stupid idea, which perhaps it was, but I just tried it out.
Yeah, well, that's such a great lesson too, I think, in entrepreneurship. Sometimes stupid ideas become businesses, and great businesses, because they were just allowed to blossom. In a sense, there's no stupid idea. It's just the idea that people take on and people don't take on. So I think that's really cool.
I think what they did really well is this: they just allowed me to try things and fail, and gave me that space to not do well. or do well if it works, but more often than not, it's not doing well, and kind of looking what are the lessons from there, and just continuing to that.
So can I ask you then, do you remember what that first website you built was about?
Absolutely. It was in memory of my cat who died at that time, and I had to do something with that pain. So I grew up with that cat, and I had to find a way for her memory to live, and ended doing some coding in HTML and putting some photos and uploading it.
You know, when I was growing up, we ended up getting a computer in our house. I don't remember exactly what year, but for some reason the computer ended up in my bedroom, which now that I think about it, my parents should have had it in the living room where everyone could use it, but they put it in my bedroom, which was really nice. And I also remember, I didn't become a software engineer, but I do remember also building my first website, learning HTML just on my own as a kid. And it was about like my favorite rap artists. You know, I grew up in Queens, and we had some great rappers that are from Queens. And it's so funny. You think back on those things and you're like, why did I do that? I guess something about it was interesting to me. I feel like I hear a lot of engineers talk about how they love the idea of you can just create something and you can put it out into the world through, you know, software development, whether it's web or not. And I think that kind of the freedom to do that is really fun for a kid. And if it turns into a career, what a great story.
Yeah.
All right. So you're a young teenager, you're entrepreneurial. By the way, did you make any money off the slide? Were you able to buy 2 slides and hire other children in the in the neighborhood?
Absolutely. Made some money, and then the summer after, continued that with a partner, and then the partnership didn't work out. So had to figure out how you distribute the revenues and what, loads of relevant lessons for life.
That's so cool. So, okay, as you were doing that and you eventually go into university, did you know that you wanted a career in technology? I mean, did you think to yourself, you know, this is more than just fun. This is also a thing that I can do with my life?
I think, you know, as growing up in Israel, the military service is a mandatory part of that. Right. So when you are 18 and you kind of have all these questions, what do you do in life? Someone give you the answer. They send you to the army. And I volunteered to join a special forces unit and spend there my military service, which was very, very different than anything technology related, but was really all about getting to the extreme, right? Trying to explore what are the boundaries of what you think you can do, or what I thought I could achieve, and then seeing that what happened when I reached that boundary, and how can I go on and go on and go on and build like very strong resilience and teamwork and even leadership, right? Connect, because it's, you know, it's one thing to lead people at work. It's a completely different thing when your life depended on that. So I think that was quite a big experience for me. And after that, I took some time to recover and travel and work in technology. I was never a software engineer, but always involved in technology companies. And that's when I decided, all right, I want to study engineering, see how that takes me to the next level.
So, and you went to Ben Gurion University, I think, right? Yep. You studied engineering and like management.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Engineering and management. Yeah.
So was that fun for you? I mean, it's such a different life experience, right? I mean, in the U.S. And a lot of, I guess, in other parts of the world where there is no mandatory military service, you kind of just continue. You start school at 5 years old and all the way through university. You know, you were in the military. You spent time afterwards traveling the world, and then you were working. When you came back to university and you started to study this, did you feel that you were studying with a purpose? You know, like you were interested in all the work and you kind of had a goal in mind with school?
I think I started 23 years old, or even 24 years old. I studied at university, and I remember the shock when I started it. Like, I had no idea how to study again. I forgot that completely, right, after a few years out of it. And I remember, like, the first few weeks, there are always those people who did, you know, recent either courses or preparation to uni, and I did nothing of that. And I was like, what? How do they know all those things? Like, how I'm gonna survive this? And then you realize that you can study and you figure it out. So did I come with purpose? I was still not sure what I want to do in life. It's it was the same also when I was 30 and went to do my MBA. I also wasn't sure what I want to do in my life, but I knew kind of the skills I want. I knew that's gonna want it to be related to technology. I knew that there's some management skills that I want to learn. What is accounting and how is HR and those areas to marketing, what they are, to learn them. So that's kind of the reason I went there. It was an amazing 4 years.
So I have a question about that, because it kind of reminds me of something that I was thinking when I was at university. I feel like in the back of my mind, I always wanted to run a business. And I actually was curious, like you said, I want to know enough about accounting, enough about sort of HR and maybe human psychology, enough about finance, maybe marketing, things like that. Were you sort of, I mean, I don't know if it was conscious or maybe subconscious, but I'm just curious, because you started your first business at 10 years old. Do you think that you were always thinking to yourself, okay, I'm eventually going to that's going to be my career, my life. It's going to be to run a business?
I don't know if I was that strategic and thinking about that, but I definitely played with the idea all the time and looked if either I did some small businesses or thought about them and run some plans and tried to see how everything I learned, how can I implement that? That was always somewhere in my mind.
Yeah. So maybe it was somewhere buried back there, thinking one day. I want to take just a very, very quick pause here. We have a comment here from a person whose name is LinkedIn user. I think that's whoever you are. Thank you for your comment, TGI Friday. Thank God it's Friday. I think your privacy settings don't allow us to see who you are here on the live stream. But anyway, thank you for chiming in. And then your colleague, Brian Friedman, who is an amazing host of your guys' show. You have two shows, right? Benivo Bites and View from the Top. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So Brian, thank you. Said this conversation is awesome. Two of the best in our industry and learning so much. Thank you for your comment. And for
Brian is amazing. I'm so lucky to be working with him. He just pinged me yesterday that it's been 5 years since we started LinkedIn on the day, 5 years, and it's been such an amazing journey. I mean, I've learned so much from him.
Happy anniversary. Happy 5th anniversary of that. That's awesome. Thank you, Brian. So anyone else watching, please chime in, share some comments, just throw out some thoughts. It's always just fun to kind of interact live here. So Nitzan, you're studying university, you're kind of taking classes around different topics and showing interest in different topics. I know you eventually go to work for companies, and you end up eventually at Bank Hapoalim. And then I know you do go to get your MBA. I'm curious for a moment, what made you think I want to go back to school? I mean, you just shared that you kind of, when you got back to university and you were like, oh no, I forgot about what it means to study and kind of, all that. Did you decide, okay, at that point, I do want to go back to school. I want to get my MBA. I want to lean into this concept of, growing a business. Or did you go to your MBA before you worked at Bank Hapoalim or
no, after. So after I finished my degree, my undergrad, I spent a few years working, gaining a bit more experience, putting that into practice, and what I learned, some of it.
Yeah.
And then I realized I kind of want to accelerate my career. I want to see how can I move faster, because I'm impatient. And I also knew that I want to try live in another country, right? To a little bit open my horizon and get some international experience. So looked at the number of MBA programs and chose the one, with my wife, who actually chose the location, chose the one at London Business School, which is one of the top 3 or top 5 business schools, and really transformed my life. I mean, really open up so many opportunities for me, widened my eyes, and created really an unbelievable ride for me.
What did you think about having gone to business school just for a moment, and I asked this on purpose. I always wanted to go to business school. I went to law school. I don't want to say instead, but maybe first. I have not gone to business school since, only because I've thought that running a business has been such a great educational opportunity. But I started this show in part to bring life to the business founders in our industry, right? In the immigration and mobility industry, because I think there are a lot of folks, whether they're immigration lawyers or global mobility professionals, who have great ideas. And maybe there's a business somewhere to be had through those ideas. Do you think, as somebody who had previously kind of dabbled in business and worked in other places, do you think it was valuable to go to business school, for when you did eventually start your business?
It's a very personal question. That's tough to really give a final answer, because look at Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and so many that didn't go to business school and doing a bit better than I do. But for me, I wouldn't be where I am today without it, because I think the knowledge, yes, it's good, but there are, today it's possible to get the knowledge in so many other ways that don't require such a big financial investment. So it was not about that. For me, it was more about the network and the reputation. And opening up opportunities to reach out and connect with people within the business school network, alumni of the network, that I wouldn't be able to reach out to them as easily without that, as well as gaining the reputation. I mean, when I started the business, I was part of the London Business School incubator. So for 1 year, I get a free office space. That doesn't really help, right? But it wasn't bad. But what I was doing, I was calling other back then universities to partner on what was that business, and I was calling, instead of saying, "Hi, I'm calling from Flat Club," a company you never heard of, I was saying, "I'm calling from London Business School incubator company." But that's already changed the conversation, right? Just leveraging that network and reputation. And that's also how I got my first investment, right? So we will talk a little bit later about maybe that, but my first investor was my professor at London Business School, and got to build a relationship with him. He got to know the business and came on board. He's still the chairman of the company, Professor Eli Talmor, and someone who's been a teacher for life for me.
Okay, let's talk about this business. So this was the first business that you started kind of while you were still, I guess you were still in business, in getting your MBA program. I guess this would eventually morph and become Benivo. Is that right?
Yes.
But it started completely in a totally different universe from global mobility. So can you talk a little bit about what the business was and sort of how you came across this idea for the business?
Yeah, so it was exciting time in my career, because I did work for a bit for American Express and learn a little bit about payments, and quite a lot actually about payments, and got to get that experience. But mostly I just had to study, and it wasn't that hard. So I had quite a lot of free time. So I started to think, what do I do with that free time, and how do I get something around that? And that came, from the need of renting out my place when I was away, to finding places to stay when, we, my wife, wanted to travel. And that came an idea of, maybe there is something here about people can rent out properties when they are away and they're not using them, rent out their spare room or rent out their apartment, and then other people can stay there. And the idea sounded good back in 2010 when I started it, and there were a few players there, but not much in the industry. And that's how I started the company. It was called Flat Club. Flat is apartment in British. Right. So Flat Club was the name of that website, and started that as the business, to become really later, it was obvious, became a competitor of Airbnb, right? That we all know. But back then, that was how the business started, and it started well. We, put a small investment into it from personal savings, and then started to generate revenues when people started to book properties there, and we started to make money and hire the first employee. And that's also when we got the funding round, and it's really started to grow and be exciting. And at that time, I finished the MBA, and I had 2 offers from Deutsche Bank and from American Express. And I kind of had to make that decision, right? Do I go with the corporate opportunity, make some good money, start to pay my debts, or when I go with, give up those offers and go to start a business.
And
I think it's obvious, right? That where I ended up, but
yeah.
The reason I chose it is I kind of thought, where do I enjoy more? And what I loved about running a business is that regardless of it being small and loads of challenges, there was no glass ceiling. I could go as far as I could, and the only limitation was me, which I love, because that allowed me to really get to the full potential of exploring that. And that's when we went and started to raise money for that small business, and raised about a total of about $1.5 million, which back then sounded to me like a lot. And I thought, that's it, right? I'm sorted. The next thing I need to do is to choose a name for the island that I'm going to own very soon.
Right.
Boy, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong, because Airbnb had, for the 1.5 million I had, they had more than $1.5 billion. Right? Wow. So for every good idea that we had, they had 100 engineers to execute on that. It was like there was no chance to compete with them, and it became obvious for us. And a lot of companies were trying to compete with a lot more money. None of them survived. We're the only one who competed with Airbnb and survived. And we survived because we found another way. And that's kind of where the journey of Benivo really started.
I'm just curious, because I want to know, obviously I want to continue on the trajectory of Benivo. I'm curious though, when you were starting this business in business school, you mentioned you were calling people and saying, hey, I'm calling from an incubator, etc. As I recall reading about the Airbnb story, one of the challenges for them was really convincing people that renting out your home, whether your room or a whole home, is safe. And the double-sided marketplace dilemma, and convincing people to stay in a stranger's home, and that would be safe. I'm curious, at the time, sort of, how did you go about that, effectively creating the demand, creating the marketplace for your product? And I'm kind of saying this because I find that today in the mobility space, the discussion around technology is obviously growing, but it's still not, we still have to push the idea that technology is beneficial, right? We have to convince, players in the space that automation is the right way to go, and now is the right time to do that. So I'm just curious, kind of, how did you go about, creating the demand for this service when, as far as I understand, this was not common to, just live in a stranger's home and spend money on it,
Yeah. So exactly, right. So today I'm doing what we call the B2B business, right? We sell to enterprise, we sell to corporate, but then it was a B2C, a consumer business. And boy, is that hard. Mm-hmm. That is so much harder to do a consumer business. But what's worse than running a consumer business is doing a marketplace, because you basically run 2 businesses at the same time that not only each of them need to be successful, but they also need to correlate. And that was very, very hard, because we were getting more supply in London, but suddenly a peak of demand in Berlin. Now, well, it's not that I can move the properties and then get a peak. It was very, very hard to manage that. And, I learned lots of lessons on, first, I will not start another marketplace or another consumer website or business again, because it's a business that requires, to win, it's what I call the winner takes it all. You require huge investment in order to basically buy. That's what Airbnb did, right? They bought all the demand, and they bought all the supply through So basically tapping into existing supply, right? They took it from Craigslist in their case. And that's what you need in order to build a marketplace, because people don't have patience. They expect it to be amazing from day one as consumers.
And so now when you think about kind of the B2B space, I'm moving forward a little bit, but just theoretically, when you think about the B2B space, do you feel that, I guess is it a little bit easier to grow a business in the B2B kind of world versus the B2C?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you have a much smaller number of buyers where you can build relationship and understand their needs and build solutions for them that they will use and give you feedback. And you can do the same with a consumer business. It's just, what does it mean if you want now five people? It means nothing on a consumer business. If you want 5 clients as a B2B, that can actually be a lot more promising. And there's also the repeat business, right? So what is a accommodation booking marketplace, you start every month with 0 revenues because you had no bookings, right? So that's always been a hard part for me that I didn't like. I really like the SaaS model of software as a service. So you get a license and you have predictable revenues.
So how did you eventually, I mean, I guess to me, this is the big question. This is the big, turning point of the story. How did you go from, what was it? Flat
Club.
Flat Club. How did you go from Flat Club, which was this Airbnb kind of competitor, to creating what is now Benivo? I mean, it sounds like a big shift, business model wise, industry wise. I mean, how did that come about?
Yeah, it had two main stages. The first stage was to figure out that there is something here about mobility and about movement of people, and that happened by luck, right? We were looking at 10 different avenues. How can we go into a place where we'll not compete anymore with Airbnb? And we were trying all 10 at the same time because we had no idea which one would be successful, which means we couldn't build 10 products and try it out. We had to figure out a way. How do we do something that is very, very cheap for us to fail in order to try all 10 simultaneously? And that's what brought the opportunity with corporate. I got into a meeting with Google through one of the interns who was supporting us at Benivo, at the Flat Club, and she got that through her network, and got into this meeting and talking to them about this website we have for booking temp housing. And they said, yeah, that's nice, but that's not what we need. And they started and asked, so what is your problem? And they told to me, and they said, we have 2 issues. One of them is that when we have employees relocating, they want a digital experience. They come to work for Google because the digital generation, and they want to have the same experience that they will have when doing anything online. But currently they have someone on the phone. And that's not what they want. And we also have a payment problem. Right? We have a process with payment. We want to get money to people before they start to work for us, because that's when they need the money to pay for housing and to pay, especially think about an intern moving from Poland to Switzerland and suddenly an expensive country. No one will give him property, even if he works for Google. And Google obviously pay them well, but payroll process will take 6-8 weeks to get to him. So how do they close this gap? It's a process problem that they had there with payment. And I thought about it, and we thought about it and said, all right, we have a payment engine because booking temporary housing, etc. We had that. Maybe we can repurpose that for this need. And we said, yeah, we'll do it. We will be able to solve it. And they said, great, can you go live next month? So what do you do in that place, right? You need to figure out a way to not only deliver, but deliver that fast. And what I like to say is what we've managed to do at that stage is we managed to sell them a product that I like to call the ugliest page in the history of internet pages. When I say it, people normally don't believe it. If you want, I can show a screenshot, but I actually have that. But we have a very, very simple concept there. And Google is not a stupid company. They knew that this is like the ugliest page in the history of internet pages. But they were innovative, and they really wanted to solve that need for their employees and deliver a solution. And with that, they gave us this opportunity, and they signed with us a contract on 50 employees, and we delivered that, right? We've done that over the summer. We had to find ways to deliver, which were mostly manual, because we didn't have time to build the technology properly. And we came up with a product called Pay Later, which, as it sounds, the Google employee will find a property they want, will tell them, oh, don't pay for that, we'll pay for it, and you will pay for us later, you will repay it later. And we created that whole engine that allowed us to basically solve their payment problem and deliver on that. And the first I think it was a 3 months project ended, and the first 50 employees were very happy about it. And and suddenly Google said, okay, let's roll it out all over Europe.
Wow.
And that time we started to realize, okay, there is more traction for that. And that's a lot more interesting than competing with Airbnb and all their billions of dollars. So we raised a bit more money and closed that business completely. So no more Flat Club, no more renting of properties anymore, and went into the area of providing that digital experience for employees who are relocating, as well as the payment solution to create that support and that solution.
Wow. Was it difficult for you to close a Flat Club? Because, I mean, this has been that you started, this is your baby. I mean, I know it got you to where you were. And in hindsight, you can say, of course, but I mean, in that moment, at that time, was it sort of a difficult decision, or were you just thinking, okay, this makes sense, the other one is hard, goodbye, let's move forward?
I was a bit more emotional than that. So I did spend probably 5 years, right, on that, and we did run both of these business in parallel for a while, to try and figure out, right, does it really work, and what is the right place where is the right place to invest? And yeah, in many ways it was saying goodbye to a chapter. But I was so excited about what's coming forward, and I was so energetic about it. It filled me with like ecstatic. So I just, yes, let's just do it. Let's just do it properly. If till now we had to split our resources between running 2 businesses, or even 3, because Flat Club was 2 businesses with that marketplace need. Suddenly we can put everything into one. That sounded like something I definitely wanted to achieve.
Now, can I ask you kind of maybe a technical question? Were you able to leverage any of the tech that you built for Flat Club into kind of those beginning stages of Benivo? And I ask this because there's a lot of, this question of repurposing and retooling what you've already done at a pivot. That's one thing, but I mean, almost starting completely, like building your code base effectively from scratch is another thing. So I'm just curious, did you have that discussion internally or with your team, or was that not really something that was possible because the businesses were so different?
In the beginning, yes. In the beginning, we were repurposing the payment tools, and we were repurposing some of the other capabilities. But over time, we just separate that completely. So today, there is not even one line of code that is there from that area of being Flat Club. So yeah,
that's such a good lesson to me, I feel like, because there's probably a tendency to want to just hold on to whatever you've done in the past. And I think this to me is like the wisdom of, appreciating when something you've done before got you to a certain point, but realizing that maybe at that point it's time to move on, whether it's a business model or it's code or, whatever, yeah, it's so interesting. I don't know. For me, I guess
it's much easier in hindsight. It's so hard to see it in live, right?
Yeah.
It's after you see, oh, we haven't touched that part of the code now for 4 years. Why are we still running it in the background? And you ask yourself, it's like, what's going on? So
Yeah.
it wasn't like that in real time, like in a movie, we're making decisions, do this, let's move up. No, because you need to mitigate the risk, right? Even with Google, we why did we come with this ugly page of them that Matthew Cheek, our chief commercial officer, created in 5 minutes on the way to the meeting? Why didn't we build like something? And he's not even a coder, right? Why didn't we do something more properly? Because we had no idea. We were running on 10 ideas, right? So we didn't have the time to build 10 products that will be amazing. We have to try, and we had to fail quickly. And this one worked out.
Wow. It's also really cool that Google kind of, you're obviously a small company, and they were taking a chance on you as well, which is really, really awesome.
Yeah, they are an amazing company. Still very proud to be for them to be our client. But they really paved the way for us, and were very tolerant with us when we were still figuring out what actually we are doing.
Yeah.
Amazing company.
I guess that shows that they kind of walk the walk. I mean, they were the same. They were a small startup just a few decades or a decade and a half earlier, basically. So, I mean, that's amazing. So at this point now, you've moved away from Flat Club. You've created this business that's supporting some of their relocation from a tech standpoint. First, it was 50 employees, and then I suppose it grew to Europe and then more. And it's also sounded like you raised some additional funding at that point. First of all, I guess, where did the name Benivo come from? Was there already a name for it, or were you sort of just, there's a product and that's it?
No, so we realized that the name Flat Club had lots of issues. First, it was not relevant to what the business was doing now. Second, right. The word flat was very British. No one outside of the UK was really using that. People were calling us the Fat Club, and all kind of different ways of pronouncing that. And we started to look for another way, and that's where we came across, in fact, what do we want to do there, right? We want to create a welcome experience. We want to make employees feel welcome, make something, special here. And we started to play with the word welcome, and that's how we come to Benivo, which come from the word welcome in 8 languages: bienvenido, bienvenu, bienvenete, etc. And that's kind of, when we set the company new mission as make every employee welcome, and came up with the rebranding, the new name.
That's so cool. So the word Benivo itself doesn't have it's not an actual word anywhere, but it's sort of like a similar to, yeah. That's super cool. That's really clever. Yeah, it does have that sort of bienvenido kind of feeling to it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I want to talk, I guess, a little bit now and talk about maybe the growth trajectory, or the first iteration of this was to help effectively pay or help these folks get housing and be able to pay for that housing before they started. Obviously, right now, the platform does so much more. How did you begin to grow the offerings of Benivo at that time in terms of, was it first for the employees, and then it became also something that the in-house mobility team focused on, and then, okay, well, we should bring in the tax people or whatever. How did you start to kind of build out the product?
Yeah, we kept doing the same thing that we were doing before. We're just talking to corporates, trying to understand their needs and build the solution. So we started with that employee platform and the payment solution. And we realized that companies are looking for more, and we learn more about technology in our industry. And I have tons of respect to people who work in global mobility, because they are doing phenomenal work with very outdated tools. It just requires so much hard work to deliver everything that this industry is able to do, those amazing experiences, but without the tools. And it made me think a lot of, I've seen technology elsewhere. It's a lot more advanced. What would happen if that technology will come into this industry? How will that change, right? How can we start to use data? And when we started to talk about it with corporate, their eyes open up, and they started to tell us all those manual work that they're doing now. And, they don't have time for a meeting with us because they need to copy paste information between systems and to try to reconcile things that don't reconcile and sit on different spreadsheets and different tools. And it just sounded like a pain. And then the pandemic happened. Right? So we were working on trying to really figure out where we fit in that model, and suddenly the world of mobility is shut. Right? It's March 2020. I was at BAM in San Francisco, my first time there, really excited about all the energy coming back. And as I land, I open my phone, and the first case in the office is closed. And the week after, the whole country is closed and the whole world is closed. And obviously, for everyone in mobility, that was like a shock, right? And I took a minute to think about that, and I said, well, I have no idea what the word pandemic is. I didn't even know the word then, or what it means. I know nothing about healthcare, but I know something about business and financial crises. And what's happening now is also a financial crisis. Now, what I've seen in previous financial crises is that at the end of each of them, there are winners and losers. And we need to decide now if we want to be a winner or we want to be a loser. And obviously, everyone wants to be a winner, but what does it mean to be a winner? Right? And we said, all right, this is our opportunity to really add value to clients in ways we didn't think, right? Let's go and there's going to be now a time of a year and a half, maybe two of downtime, because that's what happened with every financial crisis. Let's see how we use this time to do something remarkable. And I came to my team and I did a big presentation telling them, this is the end of peacetime. We're starting wartime. And we're going to reshape the priorities of the company. First, the first priority that we will put is protect each other's jobs. We will make sure that no one will be made redundant, no furloughs, and no salary cuts. I guarantee that to everyone here that until the last dollar in the bank is used, we will not do that. We will protect everyone's job. What I ask you in return is let's do the best work we've ever done in our life. And you don't need to now, because I've been in companies who've been through financial distress. The first thing you do is you start to figure what's going on. And I wanted to create that clarity for everyone, that they have the same transparency, the same information I have, exactly how much money you have in a bank, exactly what's the runway. Everyone knew that. And then we said, all right, let's go and let's build those tools that will change the role of mobility and allow global mobility manager to move from being reactive to being the last one to know when something goes wrong, to handle all those escalations, to change their role to be proactive. So they can use data to anticipate problems before they become escalations, that they can use data to consolidate and to consolidate and reconcile expenses in real time, so they can come to the business and consult to stop doing admin. I mean, David Carmichael from CGI, who was one of our first clients and a huge inspiration for me, he kept saying that I want my consultant to stop do repetitive work. It doesn't add any value to anyone when my consultant need to do the same thing over and over every day. I want them to consult, not to be admin. Let's eliminate their manual work. And we went on this journey with them and with others and went process by process to automate that, to identify how do we build those tools for mobility that will really transform. That's when we created, during those 2 years, we've built what is now our unified mobility solution, which is covering the 3 pillars of mobility: the corporate, the suppliers, and the employee, and connecting all 3 through payments and through data. Everything sits on a single data source, which means that suddenly a lot of data that was not available before can be used to make better decisions, right? So as a mobility manager, I don't need anymore I can automate my workflows. I can generate all the documents I need in one click and get employees to sign it using DocuSign, not anymore need to print. And who does these things? And I can authorize all my vendors in one click rather than going to 5 different systems and copy paste the information. And then they can also monitor the vendors' SLAs. So they can see, we were talking about immigration, right? So I can see as the mobility manager in real time, what's the status of the immigration application with my employee? And that creates that visibility to the mobility manager as well as to the employee. Because, Brian Friedman is using this example a lot. Why do we get better technology when we order a pizza than when we relocate? Because when you order a pizza, you can see where it is in every moment.
Yeah.
So we created the same experience to the employees to manage their expectation across all the vendors, not just immigration. And then we use the data to help make decisions, because now all the SLA are being tracked by us, not by the vendor. Mm-hmm. Now, when the vendor is tracking their own SLAs, surprise, surprise, they meet 100% of them.
Okay.
Without tracking it, we give the corporate the tool, but also the vendor the tool, because they can see how they perform and they can ensure that they deliver a better experience. And then we use real-time analytics to not only identify the SLA, which look at the past, but also see in real time how many employees are stuck in a stage for longer than the SLA. So if no one contacted the employee within 3 days, let's say that's the SLA, we'll automatically raise a flag to the vendor, to the corporate, and the corporate can go and resolve it even before the employee knows that something goes wrong. So think about that experience for a VIP who, starting to, they submitted something, it got lost. No one would have known that unless this employee will complain. And this VIP will normally complain to the manager of the mobility manager.
Right.
So instead, we give the mobility team the ability to see that there is something that's going wrong and be able to fix that. Then that employee doesn't even know that. And we take that even forward, right? Because we use this data to use predictive analytics to predict how long will it take someone to get their visa based on recent applications, and then compare it to the work start date and see, are they going to make it on time? And instead of waiting for the last minute where, you need to explain to the business, sorry, we couldn't get the visa, we can predict that and start to work on solutions, whether it's EOR, employer of record, or whether it's, apply for a VIP visa process, or whatever the solution, or postpone the start date or put someone else. But we allow mobility to come with solutions, not just excuses. That's the big transformation that we see in the industry and driving with data. And the same happened with the cost estimates, right? Cost estimates that are, we've launched together with Vialto partners, the smart cost estimate that is running on actual data, not only on estimates, and able to compare in real time the estimated cost to the actual cost, right? So when, at the moment, the mobility team run a cost estimate, and then at the end of the assignment, they sometimes need to come to the business and say, oops, that was 3 times higher than the estimate. I'm really, really sorry. But what could I do? I only now got the invoices.
Right.
So, sorry. Good luck to you in fixing your budget and sometimes even, submitting again financial accounts. So now we monitor in real time, and we can show them in real time that the actual is starting to get into a threshold, let's say 80%. So 80% of the budget that was approved was already used. We can raise a flag, and the mobility team can go to the business and work with the business. Okay, we have an issue here. Let's solve it before it becomes a problem.
Right. Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, it's also crazy to me. I didn't realize that this transformation happened just 2.5 years ago. Do you think that where Benivo is now is drastically different from how it was just right before March 2020?
Absolutely. It's a different company.
Wow.
The value that we've managed, during the pandemic, we've more than doubled our business. At a time where the industry went down, right? The worst time to be in. We've done it through digitalization and through really realizing that we need to not only be a benefit, but be a tool. That's why I said there were two stages of transition. It was one to stop doing flat lab,
Right.
but this one was maybe the more important one, to become that unified mobility solution, that end-to-end solution that really provide value that is not available today.
So I want to take a quick pause here because I want to get into a few more things that are moving forward, but I want to just shout out Anna Helena Franca said, thanks for sharing your personal experience. Nitzan Beth says, Nitzan, it's a fantastic leader. Learning more about how Benivo came to be. Thanks for sharing. We have another LinkedIn user saying, great story. So thank you for that. Vanessa says, thanks for sharing your story. And Lynn Greenberg says, hi, both. Hi, Lynn. Thank you for tuning in. So again, we got just a little bit more time. I have a few questions I really want to get to. Thank you for sticking around. I know it's getting later and later. But for folks who are still listening, if you have any more shout outs or you want to say hi, keep the comments coming. Always love to see them. It's nice to know that people are listening. Sometimes you forget. You get into a conversation with each other, and then you're like, "Oh, right, there's a whole audience." But Nitzan, so this is it's so crazy for me almost to think about how kind of recent and transformational this change is. One question that I would have for you is, and I guess even just I'm curious because the listeners of this show are fairly varied across the mobility space. Who is your sort of target, I don't know, client, or like who needs to know about Benivo in the sense that they can come in and use the platform or benefit from it somehow? Because you're not a marketplace. It's not that, you need all these suppliers and all that. You provide data, you provide analytics, you do provide some automation around the experience of mobility. Does that mean that your clients are corporates and their in-house mobility teams only, or are there other players that sort of can benefit from what you guys have built?
Our only customers, those who pay us money, are the corporate.
Okay.
That's who we sell to. Those are those who get the most of the value. We also work with vendors. So if a corporate wants us to manage their vendors, we will manage vendors and pay those vendors and track their SLAs and do all of that. So yes, absolutely, we work with the industry partners. But our customer that we focus most on is the corporate, the in-house mobility team. And those who like to work with us are those who really passionate about employee experience and about transforming the role of mobility using data to really drive that change.
And then internally, I guess I'm just trying to kind of visualize it. The people at a corporate who interface with Benivo, I mean, obviously the mobility managers and the people handling that, but it sounds like the assignees also get like they touch, they feel, they see Benivo. And then is it also others like, the business, when they have to look at financials or legal, if they need to look at an SLA or something, is that sort of how you envision companies, interacting with Benivo?
Yeah, so often the business is using Benivo as well to automate some of their workflows and some of their reporting and to see the status, what's happening with their employees. Obviously, mobility is using that heavily, and the employees who they relocate as well as their spouse or partner, because we also provide as part of our standard license a separate platform for the partner spouse for them to also welcome them and create a digital experience for them. So a few stakeholders.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And that's important, right? Because yes, like we were saying earlier, employee experience for relocating employee is sometimes very related to how their family is feeling and how happy they are, maybe even more so than the job. And so from a technology standpoint, the spouse and the kids or whoever, all the other stakeholders also have to be taken into account. So it's cool to hear that. So I kind of feel weird, or not weird, but I kind of feel like this question has been answered already, but I do want to ask it explicitly. What do you see as the future of the company? I mean, I feel like right now you are building the future of the company because, over the past 2.5 years, it sounds like you're really investing in solving a lot of problems in-house for mobility teams. But I don't know, do you have sort of an end goal or more of a vision, or are you just sort of like, we're doing that now and ask me in 5 years type of thing?
No, we do know where we're going, but the one thing we will for sure continue to invest is listening to our customers. We hear from them what are their needs, and we build a solution. And there's a phenomenal team in Benivo. I get to do the fun, to be invited to your amazing show and to speak out of that. But there is an amazing team there at Benivo that does all the hard work, that talk to clients, understand their need, deliver the solutions quickly, and that's what we will continue to do. If you're thinking what are the trends in the industry, to me, yes, data is a huge trend, and we've seen that flying through the last year in terms of the importance it gets in the industry. The next one that is picking up as well and getting a lot of attention of the more senior people, normally it's a level above mobility, is data security and information security. Everyone knows that the weakest link is where the problem is, and the weakest link is always the supplier network. And the clients, the corporates, have a very good information security. Their direct vendors also have good, because they vet them. But what happened down the supply chain, it's a black box, and it's a black box of problems. And that's why 40% of corporate in our industry report a data breach due to a mobility downstream supplier, right? Wow. So there are huge problems there, and we've been solving them for the last year and reducing that risk by 97% with a list of technology solutions that maybe next time we'll talk about. But this is a big trend that we see the importance of that. How do we protect the employees' data? How do we make sure that we don't expose the PII down the supply chain to different vendors? Because at the moment, I hope I'm wrong, but as far as I know, we are the only one who are addressing that. And hopefully this also serves as a wake-up call to our industry. We really need to change the way we work.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I mean, we were both just at the Worldwide ERC conference in Vegas, and a lot of the questions that came up within the context of technology are centralization of data, because it's just a better experience. But then that brings up security questions, because if everything's in one place, if that place gets hacked, everything is now at risk, so I think that's really that's really.
But there's also a benefit. If everything is in a single place, it's much easier to protect it. If everything is distributed with small suppliers that don't have good security, how do you protect that? It's impossible. They need to invest. We invest millions in our security, so we know it's secure as much as possible. But what happened to a small DSP or a property managers with 20 properties? How can they invest millions into security? Right. It's never going to happen. But they do have access to all the employees' data, and their spouse and their children and the value of their home when there's a home survey. All of that data is exposed today.
That's a great point. If I kind of want to end, because we've talked about so much and it's so fascinating. I have one particular question that I'm seeing a trend in a positive direction here, but you guys recently raised a fund, raised some venture capital money, and congratulations on that. Do you see? I've been seeing a lot more sort of investment and acquisitions. Just a lot more kind of liquidity events and other sort of financial events within the immigration technology and broader global mobility technology. I guess so. I could say we can say there's a trend in that direction. How do you find, and you don't have to share maybe too much of your personal experience or whatever you feel comfortable with, but how do you find the fundraising process within mobility? And I ask this specifically because there's always a demand, rightfully so, for technology companies to do great work and to provide the best possible product and security and all that. It's really hard to do that proactively if a company doesn't have money in the bank, because it takes, like you said, a team to do the really difficult work, talking and building out the product, testing the product, releasing the product, fixing bugs, etc. It's hard to do that when you're self-funded. And I say this as somebody who is self-funded. I mean, our product is very niche, but I can't imagine the resources it takes to really run something that supports an entire, global mobility department across large companies. How do you view the fundraising process within mobility? Sort of, I don't know, do you see that it's getting better? Are investors now learning more and understanding more about what mobility is and they're seeing the value in it? I don't know, like what's your kind of gut feel about fundraising and mobility now?
Absolutely. There's a lot of, I mean, there are two trends here. One trend is that there is more technology investment in our industry, and I expect that to continue. And the second is you see the merging of the traditional businesses because they have low margins and they find it hard to compete and they have to merge because if they're not going to be the biggest, they will not survive. Or a niche player, right? But that's kind of where that happens. I think in terms of investments, I've done 6 funding rounds in my life, right? So 6 times I went through that. It's always hard, but and it always takes at least 6 to 9 months. But I never had a funding round that went as smoothly as the last one as we did with Updata Partners, who invested in us now $12 million. We've got to the finish line there with 4 term sheets. There were 4 funds who wanted to invest in us, and that means that they all believe in mobility. That they all, yes, we had amazing metrics, we had phenomenal numbers. That's why they wanted to, and of course, unbelievable team. That's why they wanted to invest. But that just showed the interest. And I still being approached at least 3, sometimes 5 times every week by funds who are telling me, I've been following the mobility industry. I think that there is a lot of opportunities there. We happy to have a chat with you, and looking to see where we can get into that. So yes, there is interest in investing in that. We've seen CDNR investing in Vialto Partner, a much more significant amount. I think there is more coming. Right, we've shown a sabbatical raising funds, some in the immigration space, and a few other places. I think there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, no, I agreed, and thanks for sharing that. It is good to know though that it is always hard. I mean, it's a good reminder. Sometimes the news only talks about the successful fundraisers. TechCrunch doesn't write about the founder that didn't meet the round and had to close the company, but that happens a lot. And I think sometimes people have overly optimistic expectations when they're going fundraising, and then they're met with disappointment. But the reality is it's always tough, even if you have a great business, even if you have good metrics, even if you have a wonderful team. It's people's money. I get it. I mean,
I'll give you one number, right? And to give that, not in this funding round, but in the previous funding round, when we switched from Flat Club to Benivo, I went and I get 59 no's before I got my yes for an investment. That means that 50 times, and these are 59 that I had on my spreadsheet, where I didn't just send an email and whatever happened. It means that I spent at least 1 hour in a meeting with that investor. And after that, they said no, and sometimes gave some reasons. Sometimes that was hard to hear. And with some of that, I remember one of the funds there, I spent 23 meetings before we got to no. They actually
23
meetings.
Wow.
So the amount of time that requires, and also the resilience, because that's what I have here to say to everyone who is looking at, keep going. It's there. You just need to keep going. It's hard. And if I would have stopped after 59 and wouldn't wait for one more to get the yes, probably, you wouldn't invite me here today. So keep going. It is hard. It's the hardest thing in the business to raise money.
Yeah, that's insane. Wow. Well, I'm grateful that you did. And I suspect the industry Google is certainly grateful as your first big client. So that's really crazy. That's super cool. I usually try to end these episodes with kind of a fun question or an inspiring question, but I think that was the most inspirational thing that anybody who's listening can hear. So, Nitzan, thank you. This was so wonderful. It was really great to hear the story, and the pivot is just, this is like Benivo lore. You know what I mean? You started as kind of an Airbnb, a competitor, and here we are kind of helping the mobility industry automate and kind of lean more into technology. It's so cool to hear that. So thank you so much. Thank you for staying up late. I know it's late, so appreciate you kind of maybe pushing your bedtime back a little bit. I'm sure you have a lot of sleep to catch up on. I know I do. So thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope to have you back, and after your next fundraise, and keep learning more about what you guys are doing and how you're helping the industry.
Would love to, and thanks so much. It's a big honor to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I didn't get a chance to do this, but Mary Weaver says, I love learning more about how Benivo has evolved into a company it is today. I'm so excited to see what next year will bring. So that was so true. Again, LinkedIn user, I'm sorry I don't know who you are, but thank you so much for your comments here, saying I love to hear every time I hear you talk. The wow, this was a wow. I saw this comment come up when we were talking about 23 investors or 23 investor meetings. So yeah, I said wow, and then the comment came up. So thanks for being such an active participant, and have a great night. So thank you all so much for being here, for listening, for engaging. What a fantastic, just interesting and inspiring conversation. Oh, Karen Gerba. Thank you, Karen, for being here. Sorry, check out, for what it's worth, if you want to continue commenting in the future on these shows, whether mine or someone else's. I think there's probably a security feature there where you're not sharing something, and so that's something to look at. But anyways, either way, appreciate your comments. Yeah, this was such a great episode, and I have so many takeaways. Not that I'm going to go through all of them, but I think that last one, a bit about just keep going, keeping on going. I need to hear that. I think every founder needs to hear that, even the biggest founders. I mean, you look at Mark Zuckerberg right now, Facebook, on the news, they're facing challenges. They're having layoffs. Even Mark Zuckerberg needs to hear that reminder to keep going. So I appreciated that very much. So thank you all. Come join. I'm really excited to be back with the show. So come back next week. We'll be having another conversation and learning more about immigration mobility tech. Until then, have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourselves. Stay healthy and happy. And see you there. See you next week. Cheers.